Hi, everyone. It's Rob, and thanks for listening in today. I greatly appreciate your time. As co-CEO of Image One, I still can't believe this is our 30th year in business. Humbling, to say the least, and it has everything to do with our amazing people. Today, my guest is former United States Senator Doug Jones of Alabama. Senator Jones served as United States Attorney during the Clinton administration and prosecuted the former Klansmen responsible for the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, that killed 4 young girls. He is the author of Bending Toward Justice, the Birmingham Church Bombing that changed the course of civil rights. Senator Jones practiced law in Birmingham until being elected to the United States Senate in 2017. He is currently a fellow at the Georgetown University Institute of Politics and Policy and a contributor at CNN. There are many nuggets of wisdom about our political system and the media that will help give you perspective and help you to lead with genuine care with everyone, every day, every time, and with yourself. I want to express my deep, deep gratitude for all of your support and gratitude to my friends, Kathy, for connecting me with Senator Jones, Ashish and Jimpa, and our team here at Image One for helping to make leading with genuine care a real difference maker in this world. If you haven't added your name to our email list, please do at donothingbook.com. If you're a regular listener, you know we have had many, many important conversations with some amazing people. If you're inspired, please share the podcast with your friends, coworkers, and people in your network. Okay, so please enjoy my chat with Senator Doug Jones. Senator Jones, thanks for joining me today. I'm so grateful you're here.
My pleasure, Rob. It's great to be with you.
I wanted to start by addressing your farewell speech from the Senate floor, where you asked your fellow senators to learn from Atticus Finch. You said a quote from him, to see things from another person's point of view, walk around in their skin, their shoes, to find common ground. That progress is not a zero-sum game. And then from my perspective, it kind of seems like we're here again, new administration, same division. And what I'm curious about is, you've been there live in person, what is going on with these really smart people who do not seem to be emotionally intelligent to a certain extent and have a hard time respecting each other as humans and outside of their own political self-interests?
Well, Rob, I'll be honest with you. I think there's a lot more bipartisanship and collegiality and finding common ground that goes on behind the scenes than people see. I think one of the real problems that we've got with Congress right now is that the leadership has changed the U.S. Senate such that it's no longer that great deliberative body. It doesn't debate bills on the floor of the Senate. It doesn't debate and mark up for bills in committees. Everything is done and it's prepackaged. And when it gets to the Senate floor, the outcome is everybody knows what it's going to be. There's no opportunity to add amendments. There's no opportunity for what they call regular order. And because of that, Senate floor speeches have turned into just pure political speeches. We're not debating the issues of the day. We're trying to score political points. And that's a real problem because that's what the American people see. And what I call the dueling press conferences often on these issues. But behind the scenes, there's a lot that goes on to work on bills, to try to find that common ground, to try to find bipartisanship. You do it in different ways. And so I think if we could get back to some regular order of the Senate business, where the leadership is working together for these common goals, knowing that they may come at them from different points of view, but still find the common ground and let the American people see debates on these issues and not just trying to score political points. We've come a long way to healing the divides. Washington, D.C. is probably actually one of the most bipartisan cities in the country, but yet people don't see it. And therefore, the rest of the country is so damn polarized, we can't stand it.
Mm. How can we see it? I want to lean on the media a little bit. I don't have the solution to that. I do have a question in here about the media and sort of what's going on. And it's been going on a long time, obviously. But I always think to myself, I don't know what to trust anymore. And I don't know who's saying what. And some things sound good to me and other things don't. And sometimes that might be my own information bias. But how can we change that? How can we see what's going on on the back end of things? I learned that from you in your speech. I felt like things were more bipartisan than it seemed, but we just don't see it.
No, you don't see it. And I don't think that's just a media problem. I think that is partly a problem of those delivering the message. They're delivering the political messages. They're delivering what they think their base wants to hear. It's about their political survivalship as opposed to what's really the best thing to move the country forward. And I think that that's the biggest issue. I think there are too many people that just give these political messages to try to score points for their base, to either further their career or to keep and hold on to their office. I think that's what you saw in the House of Representatives vote, where 130 some odd Republicans voted for the challenges to certain electors in certain states. That's absurd. I mean, that's just crazy. But yet they felt compelled to do that in order to solidify their base. That is as opposed to trying to educate their base, to try to tell the people in their districts, wait a minute, you're getting wrong information here. This was an election was not stolen. There was, nothing that is going to overturn this election. We need to do our constitutional process, but instead they fell victim to trying to perpetuate that myth. And so at the first instance, the media will report what is said and done. And so I think it's up to public servants to get that message out, to stand up, to speak truth to power, and not just pander to their base, whether it's from the right or the left. They've got to speak truth. Once they do that, if they do that, that will get reported. You've seen it time and time again, that it's almost like it's a mythical creature when someone, actually does that. Look what happened after the first impeachment vote. When I announced that I was going to vote for impeachment, it went absolutely crazy because people assumed I would vote because of the politics in Alabama. Mitt Romney was the same way that day. His speech was not long after mine. And it was like, oh my God, here we've got somebody who's really looking at these issues. That should be the norm, not the exception. And so when we've got folks that will stand up and talk about these issues, the media will cover it. Now, you're going to always have the silos and try to spin this for sure. But the more people that can speak up and be consistent, when Republicans and Democrats are essentially talking about the same set of facts, but only what they believe where we need to go, then you're going to see everybody's going to have to cover it the same way. It's the same set of facts. So it's a combination of problems. And I wish our public servants would speak more about that and talk about the issues of the day in a way that doesn't cause people to go, what I said, go to their corners, their political corners.
Yeah. I got thinking about something you mentioned, the Jones law of politics.
Yeah. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. I mean, and it's absolutely true. And it's especially true in today's world. Ben Sasse, the senator from Nebraska, used this term when right after the whistleblower complaint that ultimately resulted in the first Trump impeachment was released. And he said, people need to let this play out a little bit. We live in a world of what he called insta-certain. You see something and you immediately make a judgment and go to your corner. That's true about certain political things. It's true about mass shootings. It's true about police reform issues. People make immediate judgment and feel they have to take a side instead of letting the facts play out and helping those facts play out and develop, rather than trying to spin them in a way that you think it kind of promotes your political agenda.
Who is a leader in your lifetime, a political leader, who you felt really inspired the country to come together? maybe closer to the middle? And who is someone that you see on the horizon who could do that for us?
Well, that's a tough question, because I go back a long way. I mean, I think both John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy inspired a lot of folks. Now, they came along at a time when civil rights was really at the forefront, and that after Jack Kennedy's election and the efforts to promote rights more on a national level, then they lost a lot of support in the South. But I think Robert F. Kennedy inspired so many people to do so many things. That is the person that I think who we can look to. And you've had others in their own right. I mean, I disagree with Bernie Sanders on a lot of his positions, but no one can doubt that Bernie inspired a lot of people to get involved and to get engaged. I think he sometimes allows his followers to be a little bit too much of what I call a checklist, but the inspiration is still there, and it got a lot of people involved in the election and the political process. I think Joe Biden has that opportunity. I think he's done that his career. He did that for me as a young law student in 1977 when I first met him, or 1978, I guess, and inspired me to get engaged more, but to also do it in a very forthright and transparent way, that where you're not hiding what you believe, but you're willing to listen and you're willing to understand and talk about what we can do together. That's why I've kind of been a supporter of Joe Biden's for a long time. And I think following Donald Trump, who did not have that ability, you can say what you want to about Donald Trump, good and bad, but the one thing he did not inspire was common ground. It was generally my way or the highway with Donald Trump. And Joe Biden's not like that. He ran on platforms and he's very strong on those, but he wants to try to reach the consensus. He wants to try to let the Senate and the House and the Congress find that common ground to move the country forward. So I think he's got that opportunity going forward, and especially following the Trump administration. But people have to give him a chance too. They can't just immediately, and that's the challenge he faces from those who just have shut the door because he beat Donald Trump, because he's a Democrat, whatever reason. People have to give him an opportunity. If they give him that opportunity, he can be, and I think will be, a transformative figure.
A thing that I'm curious about, and I think about some of my more conservative friends, and when President Biden took office, he overturned through some executive orders some of the things that President Trump had passed. To someone on that side of it, they may be looking at that and saying, I don't see any sort of collaboration there. It's just turning it, overturning it through a signature. What am I missing there?
No, you're not missing anything. But what they're missing is that Donald Trump did the same thing with Barack Obama policies, whether it's environment, whether it was race and discrimination. People think that the tax cut and those kind of things were Trump's signatures. It wasn't. It was the rollback of things that were occurring during the Obama administration. Go back when Obama was elected, he did some of the same things that George W. Bush enacted. George W. Bush did the same thing that Trump, and unfortunately it is building. And that is, I think, one of the bigger problems that we have in our society and in government these days is that Congress has ceded too much authority to the executive branch of government. And the executive branch of government has taken that authority. If they can't get their any programs through the Congress, then they take that authority, and that's on trade, it's on the environment, it's on any number of things. And they've got that. And so what we're seeing now, because we're not seeing the bipartisan efforts in Congress, because we're not seeing the big legislation to come forward that passes both houses and gets to the president's desk, whether the president signs it or not, it's a different issue. But we're not seeing that. And so the executive is going to say, well, I'm not here as a caretaker. I'm here to get things done. I got elected. I'm going to do things regardless of whether or not Congress does it or not. So your conservative friends are correct. They're just missing out on history and what they would expect. If a Republican replaces Joe Biden, they're going to expect, and they'll be fine with that administration doing and trying to undo what President Biden's done. We need to let Congress get more involved. That's the way the Constitution was set up, and we need it. But they've got to step up and do it, or else we're going to continue to see this pendulum again. Going back to the Jones Law of politics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. And so there you go. It is a prime example.
I'm a small business owner in the Detroit area, Detroit, Michigan. I asked our team, we have 55 team members. I asked them for some questions for you. One question you already answered, so I'll skip that one. But another question was, why can't we have a single bill system? It seems like everything's getting lumped into one bill, and sometimes they don't relate to that bill. So in your time there, you got to experience what was going on with that. Can you shed some light for that question?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually had this discussion yesterday with one of my students, and I'm doing a fellowship at Georgetown University on the partisan divide in this country. Not just the divides general, and the connection between the divides in this country and the injustices in this country. And he had a very similar question. And again, it goes back to the process of the Senate, not as much the House, but the process in the Senate. And the leadership in the Senate over the years has decided that this is the way they want the Senate to work. They want the Senate to work where they don't put individual bills on the floor and let those bills be debated and let amendments be offered and those amendments be debated. And at the end of the day, a bill is crafted that will get an up or down vote, and it may or may not pass. And so what happens as a result of not being able to do that, a lot of bipartisan legislation, and remember, just about everything that goes into one of these omnibus bills, and that's mainly what we're talking, either the omnibus appropriations bills or the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. Those are the must-pass bills, okay? So a lot of extraneous things gets into those bills, but they're bipartisan pieces of legislation. And so they get in there as a result of some discussions and negotiations back and forth, knowing that it's got bipartisan support and is likely to be passed without objection. I don't like that. I don't think that's a good way to do things at all. But until you can get the Senate leadership to start getting these bills to the floor and letting them be debated with an amendment process, that's the way it's going to be. When I worked in the Senate in 1979, the Senate committees actually did a hell of a lot of work. They not only met and had hearings, they would have these bills, they would mark up, they would debate the bills. Bills would get changed at a committee meeting. They would then go to the floor, and that bill alone would be placed on the calendar for debate. You know, Mitch McConnell, the last 3 years, there were only two kind of bills other than the must-pass bills that got to the floor of the Senate. One were bills that he knew that the President of the United States was going to sign. And there was very little amendment process at all, very little amendment. He put a bill on if he knew Donald Trump was going to sign it. Even if it had bipartisan support, if he didn't think that Trump was going to sign it, he wouldn't put it on the floor. And the only other bills he put on the floor were political gotcha bills, bills that would make, on abortion and social issues that would make, cause Democrats, especially Democrats like me, to have some very tough political choices to make, and force that issue there so it could then be turned into a political ad in our elections. That's exactly what happened to me. I had several of those votes that McConnell turned into political ads as soon as the election kicked in. So we back to regular order where committees work, debates work, and a free amendment and open amendment process.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I hope we can get back to that. Do you recognize, or are you aware of, when you're going through a process like that, does something go into your mind where you say, they could use this against me? I'm going to see an ad when the campaign comes up. I mean, are you aware of that, kind of having to even think
Oh,
that way?
yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Okay. I mean, those votes are pretty obvious. I mean,
Jeez.
and I knew that in votes like the Supreme Court nominations of Kavanaugh and Barrett Coney and the impeachment, those are the obvious ones to the public.
Yeah.
That, because you can see the political dynamics there. But, some of the bills that McConnell put on the floor was so far to the right, it was obvious to folks like me, okay, this is purely a political vote. He knows it's not going to pass, knows it hasn't got a snowball's chance in hell of passing, but yet he wants to get folks on record. Jesse Helms started that back in the 1970s on race issues, on busing, on abortion, on guns, and they're extreme. They're poison pills, and they get in, and they're put on the floor simply as a gotcha, so that they can turn. And I knew them. I knew the minute that the vote was set for the floor, I'd see an ad about it for sure.
You've been doing this a while. I'm curious, when you got to Washington, D.C. as a senator, was there anything that surprised you that you didn't anticipate, good or bad or both? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I'd been following the Senate a long time, so I'd seen the evolution of where things go. I probably didn't fully appreciate, because it just happened so slowly over time, of how much power the majority leader holds, and that even bipartisan legislation can't get to the floor unless it's just blessed by the majority leader. And that was a little bit surprising that the Senate allowed that to happen. I don't think I fully appreciated the fact that the Congress had ceded so much authority to the administration. Again, it's not those kind of things that you see. I mean, you see the flurry of executive orders with a new administration, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the trade policies and things that you don't see and hear that much about, that Congress is. But in the Constitution, Congress supposed to be doing trade, but it's just been heeded to that. The War Powers Act, those kind of things involving the military. I was a little bit surprised about that, because I just had known that not superficially, but at a real high level. But when you're doing it day to day, and you're working on it day to day, and you're in these committees day to day, it can get really frustrating. And it was especially frustrating for me that Congress, as a Democrat in the minority, with the White House Republican as well, the Senate did virtually no oversight of the executive branch of government. That's one of the constitutional roles. But there was no oversight by either the House or the Senate in the 115th Congress. Then, when Democrats took control of the House in the 116th, at least they did some oversight. Republicans in the Senate just did virtually nothing when it came to the Trump administration. And I think that that's dangerous. I'm hoping that the 117th Congress, despite the fact that it's both Democrats control both houses of Congress, they still need to do the proper oversight of the executive branch of government.
Yes. You mentioned some frustrations. I'd like to share one of mine. Healthcare. For 30 years, I've owned this business, and throughout the 30 years, we've had to navigate the costs, the benefits to the employees, what their contribution will be, giving them several choices of plans so it could fit in their budget, us trying to manage our company's budget, which we can never plan on with reliability in any given year. We spend endless hours preparing for this each year, communicating it, rolling it out. It's an absolute time suck. It's costly in both hard and soft costs. And overall, I just think it's ridiculous. So I'm curious, what do you see are these challenges that keep getting in our way where healthcare can just become a standard part of our society?
Yeah, it's really difficult because it's become such a political hot potato. It has now, since the Affordable Care Act was enacted, and opponents decided to term it Obamacare and make it a partisan issue, then healthcare has become one of those issues where you go to corners immediately when you start talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a combination of a lot of things, I think. It appears the Affordable Care Act is here to stay. It's not going to get repealed or replaced, but it still needs to be tweaked. I do think that it would help if a public option was given to allow folks to buy into a Medicare type thing. I'm not a Medicare for all kind of person. Too many people have worked hard to get their health insurance, but at the same time, a public option should be available. And I think if you can do that, you would get more folks in the marketplace. Prescription drug prices have to be reined in too. That's a huge cost. But the problem that we've got is it's really had become such a political issue with the constant attempts to not repeal and replace the ACA, just repeal with no plan, nothing to take its place, which would create havoc in the marketplace right now. So I think the federal government has got to do more and better about giving underserved and the needy good health care. We've got to do more preventive type medicine, well baby visits, checkups. If we can spend more effort and money trying to prevent disease and prevent problems from coming up, I think that'll help drive down the cost. But it is a complicated factor that involves big insurance companies, the federal government, and those regulations you're talking about are onerous. They're horrible. At the same time, taxpayers demand a certain level of accountability and scrutiny. And finding that sweet spot is really difficult. I was always one to try to talk to the hospitals and doctors and healthcare managers to try to figure out how you can streamline this without really the healthcare and the suffering. But it's a huge cost right now to comply, and there's got to be a ways. But it's a multi-headed monster that has to be dealt with. But it needs to be dealt with outside of the realm of politics, and that is the most impossible thing to do right now with healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, I do think when we look at the economy of healthcare, there's the larger companies. I think that as well, and this is another question I have for you with climate change. You have a world-renowned climate scientist there, Birmingham, Jim McClintock. Mm-hmm. Can you address climate change? And is the Paris Agreement a good one for the world?
Well, I think it's a good start for the world. I mean, the fact that you had so many countries come together with some agreement, because what the Paris Accords did, in my view, was coming together to acknowledge that we got a problem and we got to do something about it. And that's like what folks call about alcoholism and Alcoholics Anonymous. The first step is recognizing that you got a problem. And for so many years, we fought over who was causing this and who caused that. But now folks seem to be coming together to say, all right, we got a problem. What can we do to fix it? So to me, that was the most important part of the Paris Accords. Getting back in it, I think, is an important step. But the Paris Accords, like everything else in issues like that, is got to be a work in progress. And you got to have some monitorization. You got to make sure people continue to do the things and countries continue to do the things they said, and make it a process where you can revisit it ever so often, see what's working, what's not working. I said that about the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
We got to do that about the Paris Accords and climate.
Yep.
And so the thing that I think that people have to understand now that we know we got a problem, we got to do something. It's the economy, it's economics of how to do this, because that's so much. We can't just flip a switch and completely eliminate fossil fuels. Our economy depends too much on it. Alabama's economy, we would suffer greatly. Families would suffer. We can't do that. But there's a way to make sure we start transitioning, and we transition with new jobs, green jobs, things that are that we can do, that is going to have the double whammy for us of helping with the climate issue, but also helping with the economy. Displaced workers, getting them retrained. There are so many green jobs, and as we come out of the pandemic, we've got the best opportunity we've had in generations to start doing that, because businesses have closed. They're going to have to reopen. Infrastructure is going to be a way to get the economy moving again, replacing our roads and our bridges and our buildings, our schools, putting broadband out there. But you can do that now in a way that is consistent with saving this planet. And we've got these opportunities if people will take advantage of it. And I'm encouraged. I'm really encouraged. You've seen businesses and the opportunity to move forward and do it in a way that can really help the economy. I mean, you've got everything, but again, people have to understand the big picture and not just be a far right or far left advocate, and understand, for instance, that we're not going, and the world is not going to completely break away from fossil fuels anytime in probably our lifetimes. So what you got to do are look at those technologies that can capture carbon, that can do other things, and make that technology better and cleaner, because those countries, they're developing countries that are still going to be using coal. They're still going to be using, but if we can have these carbon capture type technologies, then we're going to go a long way to cleaning up the planet, regardless of the fact that we're still using fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about something that has been impactful in your career, and that is race relations and equality. And I'm curious what you've noticed since the Black Lives Matter movement started in this past 12 months. Are we headed in a better direction with that? Do you feel some optimism, or what could we be missing?
Well, I did feel a lot of optimism back last summer and the fall. It's horrible that it took the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and others to really galvanize it. And even then, those deaths might not would have galvanized the country had the pandemic also not been there and shed a spotlight on the disparities in healthcare and the fact that the COVID virus was attacking minority populations in greater numbers. I'm not sure we would have seen that. We had seen deaths at the hands of police officers before, but yet they just there were protests and then it would die off. I think the pandemic really put that spotlight on the disparities in our country for minorities in this, and those deaths really just it then just took on a whole new issue. And so I was very hopeful in the spring, in the summer and early fall. But by the time we got into the fall, the elections took hold. And those then became used as political cudgels. They, again, people went to their corners. And it was all of a sudden, it was whether you were for defunding the police or not. And that was never an issue that was on the table. Were there voices saying defund the police? Yeah. Were there voices saying defund the police that really meant something else? Yeah, there was a lot of those. Were there others that said, no, you're getting this wrong. We've got to give our police resources to do these trainings, to do the de-escalation training, to be more transparent, to get more things to them. But yet defunding the police became a central point of the campaign. It was used against me. It was used against other Democrats. Trump tried to use it against Biden, somehow saying that those efforts were causing destruction in some of the Americans that we saw. Not true at all. And so once we got into the political issues, and then we saw the January 6th insurrection, it's those things have kind of been simmering out there. They haven't gone away. And I think that we've got to get back to that. And now is the time to do that. Now, just like with regard to sensible gun measures to try to reduce the number of lives that are lost at the hands of a weapon. You try to do those things not in the heat of an issue of the day, but when things have died down a little bit and emotions have simmered and people have drifted out of their political corners, then you can talk a little bit more about these issues, because the issues that we saw last summer still exist. There have been some changes, but they still exist. There is still a huge racial divide in this country, and it involves law enforcement, it involves healthcare, it involves access to credit, it involves jobs, it involves education, you name it. It is a broad swath for our minority communities. Now is the time to do that. Again, we've got this opportunity coming out of this pandemic to build our society in a more just way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. I had the opportunity to chat with Birmingham, Alabama's current mayor, Randall Woodfin, in the fall. I don't want to assume you know him, but I'm assuming you do. And
Yeah,
I'd love to get your thoughts on him. And he took a great stance with the removal of the statue in your main park there in Birmingham, and wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think Randall's done a really good job in Birmingham. I worked with him when I was in the Senate and trying to do the things to help for Birmingham. I think that the city's in very, very good hands with him at the helm. And he did what needed to be done in the city. We've got this ridiculous statute in Alabama that prohibits the removal of monuments over a certain age. It was just designed to keep those Confederate monuments. This particular monument was a huge obelisk right in the middle of downtown, the most prominent spot in downtown. And the fact that he went ahead, despite that law, and removed it, put it in a historical place, absolutely the right thing to do. And I think there's going to be more of that coming from him in the future. He's really looking at educational opportunities and other things for the people of this city.
He's a special guy. I have one last question for you. I'm curious if you've ever heard of the country of Bhutan and their gross national happiness metric.
No, that's a new one for me, but I'm interested for sure.
So just as a little background, Bhutan decided to create this metric. They know that gross national product or gross domestic product is something that most countries track very regularly. And they thought, I wonder what it would be like to track the happiness of our society. So they came up with these 9 domains of happiness: living standards, education, health, environment, community vitality, time use, psychological well-being, good governance, and cultural resilience and promotion. And this is one of the things that they share with with the people in their communities, in their society. And wherever any of those 9 are off track, they put a greater focus on it. And I thought, wow, that's such a great thing. I mean, the economy is so important, and it's very much always at the forefront for us in the United States. But what if we did do something like that? What if we track the happiness of our country? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a great idea, and I think that in times past, things like that have been done. Sometimes it's been the other way around. I remember, in 1980. The country was in a really tough economic downturn. Inflation was up. The interest rates were hit in the high teens and 20%. And so Ronald Reagan, when he ran for president, he had a misery index, just the opposite of that. But he was making the point. He was making the point of, we're not in really good shape. And his famous line, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? So I think it's a great idea. There's probably some things out there that do it, just don't call it that.
Yeah.
But, I think the more you can do that on a factual basis, again, the problem we got now with social media and everything, people are going to look at it in a political lens and a partisan lens. If we could just have a nonpartisan group look at something like that and track that, I think it'd be a great idea. And I also think this, I think that people would be very surprised that it is not as high as they think it might be.
Yeah.
I just think that deep down, people want to be happier than they will. They could sit down and say, well, look, here's my problem. I'm a single parent working 2 jobs, and I can't get health care. And do I love my kids? And do I come home and I'm doing the best I can? And so in that sense, I'm happy. But here are my issues and here are my problems. Even folks that have a lot, they get bogged down on different issues. They've got too much regulation and too many things that they've got to do. So it would be great if we could do it, but do it in a really nonpartisan way and get down to people's true feelings.
Yeah. Well, Senator Jones, I want to thank you for your time in the Senate and your thoughtfulness while you were there, and your heart. I always felt your heart it was and is in the right place, and I think that's saying a lot. And so, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today on the podcast.
It's been my pleasure, Rob. I appreciate your kind words, and I've enjoyed being with you.
And to all the loyal listeners, I greatly appreciate you spending time with us today. And I wish you all much love and gratitude.